Today, we're going to talk about how to overcome creative roadblocks with our special guest, Jeff Sieh. Stay tuned. It's the Business of Video podcast.
You're listening to the Business of Video podcast, where the world's top YouTubers and marketers talk about what's working with online video. This podcast is
Today, we're going to talk about how to overcome creative roadblocks with our special guest, Jeff Sieh. Stay tuned. It's the Business of Video podcast.
You're listening to the Business of Video podcast, where the world's top YouTubers and marketers talk about what's working with online video. This podcast is recorded live on Facebook every week, and you can join us when you visit businessofvideopodcast.com. Now your host, Owen Video.
Welcome back to the Business of Video podcast. I'm Owen Video, your marketing coach for small business. Check me out at thevideospot.net. I'm joined here today with a superstar team. Melissa Rotunno of Melissa Media is producing the show from behind the scenes, and I'm joined on air by my favorite cohort and co-host. Nick Nimmin is live in the studio after traveling halfway across the world just to be with us here today. Nick, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Owen. How's it going over where the sun is shining right now?
It's, you know what, it's really nice. We're in this place where it's freezing in the morning and then it's 105 degrees by 10 a.m. So I'm really enjoying that part of California. But I tell you, it feels like just yesterday we were hanging out, enjoying each other's company live and in person.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. An excellent time there over the last handful of days, hanging out with you, hanging out with everybody during Vid Summit. That was an awesome experience. Enjoyed running around California a little bit as well. Well, not California, but LA as well. I went over to the Hollywood stars there again, the Walk of Fame. I lived in LA like 11 years ago for like 6 months. So I did all that stuff then, but it's been a while. So I got to go and, get my tourist on, which was, which is fun. It's always fun to, see that stuff.
It's always fun to sort of like let loose a little bit,
It is, absolutely.
Tourist, because so often, in our line of work, we're the experts. So it's nice to just sort of like let go and enjoy that. Nick, of course, is talking about Vid Summit 2017. We've been promoting that on the show all over the place, and it finally happened. The realization of it finally came to be. We had a great time there. What would you say was your the best part of the show for you, or the conference?
For me, it was getting to talk with everyone, like actually, getting to meet face to face, look in people's eyes when you're having a conversation instead of looking at a computer screen. In addition to all the knowledge that was being shared there. I mean, there's the knowledge that happens on stage. There's the knowledge that happens, when you're networking, all the little, tips and stuff that you get from people. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put you out there, Owen. And one of my favorite parts also was actually watching you speak. I've been kind of like your crusader, since I've watched you speak live.
I appreciate that. And you have been very kind with your words. And it makes me, I love being in this environment with you where we have like this mutual respect for each other. And this passion and this drive to keep getting better, and I think it motivates you. It motivates me, and I think it encourages everyone else there too. Hanging out with Alex Guberman, hanging out with Brian G. Johnson, and actually getting to see these people in real life, face to face. For me, I think really just encourage and motivates me. I'm in a place now where I'm like excited about the video, like it was brand new. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. And like you're talking about all the people there. One thing that I thought was also really cool is just so much positivity flying around the event. Everybody. Everybody's so kind. Everybody's so open to ideas. Like, I didn't hear one person there complaining about, demonetization, for example. You know what I mean? So it was just like all, constructive and positive. And you know what I mean? It was that side of it was also incredible. Just being in that positive bubble for a few days.
We want to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors. Today's show is sponsored by the BizTubeAcademy.com, and that's where business owners can learn how to dominate your niche with YouTube marketing and learn how to make videos that make sales. Today, you can get 5 advanced YouTube marketing training modules with 4 to 6 videos per module when you sign up for the low price that is advertised on the website. Just visit BizTubeAcademy.com and finally master the art of YouTube for your business. You can join the chatbot at the businessofvideopodcast.com to get alerts and join us. But right now, we want to thank a very special one of our listeners for a segment that we call the Sherifier. Each week, we select a member of our audience who shared this video on Facebook or Twitter. And today, we want to give a huge shout out to one of my favorite new friends, David Maradiaga. Now, I say that with as much respect as I can muster because I pride myself in my pronunciation of Spanish words. I do live in San Diego, folks.
Hey everybody, my name is David Maradiaga and I am your share sponsor of the week here on the Business of Video podcast. I make videos to help you tap into the potential that God has planted in you. I also make tips and strategy videos to help you grow your e-commerce business. I've learned so much from the Business of Video podcast, and I know that you will as well, as long as you tune in every single week. If you want more information on me, simply search me in YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, David Maradiaga. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, David Air 5, for sharing this video on your timeline last week. Let's move forward and talk about some news. So this is exciting. One of my favorite new social media sites. Have you heard about this new social media site? It's called Twitter.
Huh. Twitter. You know, that sounds familiar. I think I might have read something about it, like a little bit ago, but Twitter. Yeah, it sounds. Yeah, don't they have something with like alligators or something like that? Is that them? They have like something and they bite at each other or something like that. Isn't it something like that?
It's a giant alligator. And I'll tell you, I'm falling in love with Twitter all over again. I spent about 2 hours on Twitter last night. I kept telling my wife, hey, we'll go to bed in just 1 second. And I'm like, I can't believe it's midnight. But there's a lot of great stuff happening on Twitter. And, in their efforts to stay relevant, Twitter has introduced a new video-centric ad format. I'm reading you an article from TechCrunch that says this. Basically, Twitter has launched these new video website cards. And what they do is they start out as auto-playing video with a customizable headline, which then opens up to a larger video and a website preview, which ultimately directs the viewers to the advertiser's chosen website when they tap on it. Now, none of this seems super fancy or new, but Twitter points to the fact that these campaigns can be optimized for different goals, whether that's video views, website clicks, or awareness. And, I haven't had a chance to see these live and in action quite yet, but I'm really excited about it. As I'm getting more into Twitter, I'm streaming live onto Twitter. We're starting to see these new features come out. And, I think it's something we should be aware of. These new Twitter video cards. Have you spend much time on Twitter, Nick?
I don't spend much time. Actually, while you were saying that, I was on Twitter actually sharing this out, which is kind of funny. But I don't spend that much time on Twitter. For me personally, Instagram is my Instagram and YouTube, of course, are my social media platforms of choice. I'm on Twitter, but it's not something that I'm,
right,
continually, pumping content into. So I think anything like this is always good. It's obvious, what's going on with video. It's obvious where video is going. So I think with them hopping on board with this and using the videos for an ad format is definitely going to be a win long term, because video converts better than anything else. So
you're absolutely right. And, a big part of that is the way that it can be used, right? So, for example, on Facebook, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this today on the show, on Facebook, adding a video bumper, like a high impact graphical animated bumper can catch the viewer's attention and stop them in the scroll. And then they can kind of engage with the video ad there. It's been very successful for us and for our guests that we're going to bring on in just a quick second here. But I think Twitter's doing the same thing. They've got this video ad that kind of grabs your attention, and then you can click through to a website. You can continue to watch the video. And, I think it's keeping Twitter relevant. And it's nice to see, Twitter saying, hey, we've been battered and bruised, but we're not out of the game yet. So for advertisers everywhere, keep an eye on Twitter and take a look at what they're doing there. We have an exciting guest named Jeff Sieh. Jeff is a creative brain for hire, visual storyteller, social media consultant. He's a speaker at Social Media Marketing World 18, and he's also a humorist. You've probably seen Jeff's work weekly as he broadcasts live on the Social Media Examiner Facebook page every single week. He is also one of my favorite Instagram pages over at manlypinteresttips.com. That's right, Manly Pinterest Tips, a social media site that I rarely use. We want to welcome to the show Jeff Sieh. Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, man, thanks for having me on here. It's awesome to be here.
Now, can you say something funny?
I love it when people do that. No, I can't. Not at all. Nothing.
Hey,
funny.
Jeff, I want to, if you don't mind, while you don't have anything funny to say, I want to come in with a compliment, if you don't mind. I love your background there. That looks fantastic.
Thanks,
it's nice and warm and inviting.
Yeah. So this is a real life man cave. And so it's actually a portable building outside of my house that I had to do because my kids, when they're home from school, you need a place to go. You know what I'm saying? And so this is just a portable building that's, Lowe's, fake backdrop, and some signs from Hobby Lobby. So high tech here at the man.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks fantastic. It's definitely, it's a man cave, and it looks like a place that I would want to hang out. So, and I pride myself on being a man as well. So, well done there.
Well, thanks. It really, a long time ago when I started this whole thing, it was, I saw what the YouTubers were doing. I'm like, and I was starting to break into live video, doing stuff on Google Plus of all places, which
nice.
Yeah. And so I thought I'll make this thing, and it just kind of took off, and it's worked for me. So
that's
nice.
Exciting.
Nice.
That's exciting. And a lot has been working for you, Jeff. I'm seeing you more and more. Not only do you have the world's greatest beard, but you also got a great show. You do great graphic images, and I'm excited to dig into all of that with you today. But first, I want to remind you guys listening in the audience, if you have any questions for Jeff, whether live or on iTunes or YouTube, be sure to ask in the comment section. We will do our best to get to every question by the end of the show for Nick's segment, a segment we call Nick's Questions. And we'll engage with you. We'll answer your questions. Before we do that, Jeff, tell us a little bit about how you got started in this business.
Well, I actually had a company here. I'm in Longview, Texas, East Texas, and I started doing like long form video back in the day, like in 2000. Oh gosh, but I started like with Premiere version 2.0, and when Flash websites were the big thing, so I got into motion graphics doing that. So, then one day I decided I needed to start doing the social media thing that I've been telling my clients that I need to do, and I was doing Pinterest, and I was just because it was driving traffic, and I wrote a blog post called Manly Pinterest Tips #1, where I was telling how I shared a secret board with my daughter, how cool it was. Well, it took off, and like I said, back then it was Google Plus, where it was all where the new live video kind of ground was breaking, and so a guy said, "Hey, you got to do a show about that," and so we did. And it took off. I mean, we had like people like Guy Kawasaki on. We had the producer of Pretty Woman on. I mean, it just really took off. And then that led to me speaking engagements. And then that actually led to my gig with Social Media Examiner. So it's been a really crazy ride from this little platform called Pinterest.
So talk to us a little bit about, where you are. What are you doing now? You've got Manly Pinterest Tips. And I'm telling you, I don't engage with you there. I'm okay to say I'm just not a big Pinterest user,
Sure.
But I see you on Instagram, and I've told you this before. You have the best images. I love your images, and so I'm excited to dig into this topic with you of overcoming creative roadblocks.
Sure.
Where is the divide between Social Media Examiner, which I see you streaming there, and then Manly Pinterest Tips?
Yeah, so I'm actually a not a consultant, a contractor with them. So you'll see me there. Eric Fisher and I go live a couple times a week on their platform. I also manage all of their Pinterest and their Instagram accounts. I did a lot. I mean, I was one of the first ones who kind of convinced them to get in on the on the Instagram thing, and so we grew that up. I think we're at 42,000 followers now on Instagram. Create a lot of content for there. I'm now doing a lot more with stories, because stories is the big thing where you can really engage with a lot of people. So I'm doing most of the motion graphics there on the stories, and that's kind of what I do for Social Media Examiner. And then I do mainly Pinterest Tips show and podcast. Kind of do the same thing you're doing, where I take the audio and make it a podcast, and do consulting and that kind of stuff too. So that's kind of where I'm at. And one of the things you're talking about, trying to get over creative roadblocks, and I totally get that. I mean, because it took me a long time. If you look at my brand, my mainly Pinterest Tips brand, it's very retro. This is retro. I'm wearing a retro. This is what I wear at a conference when I speak. And so it took me a while, but I was able to, I drilled down into what kind of I liked, and then just took that with my brand, and then I kind of had my design style guide set up.
You know, I'm really excited to dig into that with you today, because that is an area where I struggle. And I think a lot of small business owners struggle in that regard, where we wake up one day and we go, oh, crap, I need to put something on the web. Oh, shoot, I need to have a logo in the bottom. And so every day, you know, the images look a little bit different, and it's hard to create, you know, that ongoing consistencies. Jeff, my first question for you is this. What is a creative roadblock?
Yeah, it's when you go do something and you're sitting there, either if you're writing a blog post or trying to come up with an image, and you're sitting there and you're just looking, and there's a blank screen, and you don't know what to do, and you can't think of anything to do. And so you're just stuck. And then the anxiety builds, and then you're like, oh, crap, I got to get this out by 5 o'clock today. I still don't have anything. And it just kind of escalates from there. And so that's, at least for me, that's a creative roadblock, where you're like, oh, I'm almost in vapor lock, where you know you got stuff to do, but you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Nice. So essentially it's like a video or live streamer's version, right? Or a creative's version of writer's block, essentially.
Yeah. It's like when you need to do a Periscope, like, you know, when you're doing a single thing. Interview shows are a lot more easier, I think, but doing a Periscope or something, and you're just looking at that and you're like, no one's here. Hi, everybody. You know, what do you say? I mean, it's all that kind of stuff all rolled up. All that can be roadblocks.
Yeah, and you know, something interesting about roadblocks is that you said, like you had just mentioned, that sort of doing interview shows can be a little bit easier to overcome, and I do agree with that. There's also sort of an element of, you know, I'm going to let my guest sort of be the creative today and overcome that, because I'm sort of like tanked. I'm out. Yet you still need to be able to run the show. With a creative roadblock, do you find that there's just a general lack of motivation as well, like a general lack of desire to move forward with the project?
Sometimes that can happen, because sometimes you are just burnt out. And for me, you know, that's just kind of like, I'm just tired, and, you know, I don't have any emotional energy to be creative, because I do think creativity is like a muscle. I think the more you use it and you continue to work it out, the better and easier you can call upon it. But you know, for me, a creative roadblock is like, it's just not happening. I mean, I know that I need to do something, but it's not coming forward. And you mentioned, you know, when you do a live show, letting the other people carry it, you know, you do that until their Wi-Fi screws up, and then it's all you. Or, you know, something happens when you have a sneaky guest and they're not, you feel like you're having to pull stuff out of there. So yeah, it's hard to rely on guests sometimes. So yeah, you got to be creative, you know, all the time on these shows.
Yeah. So what kind of tips? What kind of tips do you have for actually pulling that creativity out of yourself? So let's say that you do sit down in front of the screen, and you do have that moment to where you're thinking, you know, like you said, like, you know, I got to have this up by, you know, in the next couple of hours.
Right.
What am I going to do? That pressure's building. Like, what's a process that you go through, or a process that you recommend other people go through in order to start, you know, figuring out how to resolve that?
Well, the first thing I do is, like, if I have something I can't figure out and I'm stuck, I get up and walk somewhere. I walk to the house, walk around the house, take my dog out. And, you know, this sounds really counterintuitive, but sometimes I'll take a nap. It's something about, like, for me, it'll be like the subconscious is like, and they're working on it even when I'm sleeping, or taking, you know, I'm not taking the afternoon off, but like 15 to 45 minutes. And there's even been studies done of how, you know, that really does help people, you know, be more creative. That a lot of times will get me over the hump of where to start. Another thing is let's say I take a nap and I still don't feel like a ton of stuff is happening. I'll just start creating.
Yes.
Just start creating. If you're a writer, start writing, like just thoughts that you're having and just writing paragraphs. If you're a visual marketer, if you're doing video, it may be, starting to write a script out, or, let me brainstorm about guests that I want to have on my show. And then that will lead to another train of thought. Oh, he's really good about talking about visual marketing. Oh, well, I could do this, and it'll lead to some different trains of thought. So that's kind of what I do when I get stuck. And if I'm like in Photoshop, I'll just start drawing stuff, playing with fonts, and all of a sudden something will click, and then I'm off to the races with a new creative idea.
I'm reminded of one of the best books that I read last year, and it was recommended to me by Michael Stelzner, who is our mutual friend and the CEO of Social Media Examiner. He had said to read a book called, now the name escapes me. It's by the author of Going Pro. But I'm going to look up the book right now. But what it said in the book was a professional has to work through the roadblocks, right? You have to it was Stephen Pressfield.
Yes.
And, you have to work through those creative roadblocks. That's the difference between a professional and an amateur. And so having sort of like that go-to thing that you do, for example, moving around and walking your dog, getting out of the environment. Michael Hyatt talks about motion creates emotion. And we've heard success coach Brendan Bouchard talk about these same things. So as you're out walking, Jeff, are you looking for creative inspiration, or are you giving your brain a rest?
Sometimes it's mostly I'm going into dial tone mode, where people don't know what dial tone is anymore, but when it's just a blank slate where I'm trying to go, I'll see, a tree the way a shadow lands on something may, inspire me to do something. So sometimes I'm thinking about it. Sometimes I'm not. The not time is usually when I take a nap and let things reset. Then I wake up and I kind of feel recharged and stuff, and able to kind of focus better on the task of being creative that I can. The other thing I try to do, and you talked about being professional, and, as professional creatives, we also have to be proactive of our creativity. And that's, one, we talked about sleeping, but getting enough rest. But a thing that I have discovered just kind of recently is being creative in a different area, totally away from screens. So let me explain what I mean by that. I now have started, I do wood carving, and I hadn't done it before. I started wood carving, and I try to wood carve at least 20 minutes a day. So after I'm done with everything, I shut stuff down. I go and I wood carve. Sometimes I'll listen to podcasts. Sometimes I'll listen to music. Sometimes I won't. I'll just sit outside. And for some reason, the act of doing something with my hands really rejuvenates the creativity. It really makes me want to, when I come back the next day, I have ideas. There's something that resets when I do that. And I've talked to other people who may paint, or they may write, or they're doing something creative, but it's totally different. Right. And I tell you, that has changed everything. Getting away from screens. I know we live on screens. I mean, that's my job. That's your job. But getting away from that and doing something different, creative, it has just blown the doors wide open for me.
What do you think about like for people that do things like we do, as far as, video creators, live streamers, that sort of thing? What do you think about kind of making a bunch of ideas and kind of putting them away for a rainy day? Like, say you put together like a topic list of some kind. So you say, okay, well, while I'm feeling creative, I'm going to go ahead and make a big list of as many topics as I can think of to talk about, or as many, stems off of those topics that I can think about, and things like that, to go ahead and get that together. What do you think of that?
Yeah. And my favorite tool for that is Evernote. I mean, I always have Evernote open, and like, even if I'm in the line in the store, I'll be writing down ideas or something. And one of the things, like when you are being creative, a lot of times it's just like a burst of creative energy, and I'll have tangents, and I have learned to not go down those tangents and keep focused on the task, but write them down. Don't lose that stuff that may be gold later. Like if you're writing or you're creating a video and you thought, oh, that'd be a great idea for another video, take in the 5 seconds it takes to write down that in Evernote that you can go back to later and not forget. One, it lets you sleep better at night because you know that you've got this list of stuff. But it's just, I mean, it just takes a lot of weight off of you being creative all the time. It's like when Owen said, be funny at the beginning, it's like, be creative. It's the same kind of a thing. It's hard to just yank it out. But if you have that storehouse of stuff, ready, if I would have known before, I could go to my joke store and I could have told him a joke. But, it's the same kind of thing. You having stuff ready to pull out there when you need to be creative.
Nice.
That's one of the most challenging things is being creative on demand, and I really love what Nick said. In fact, we were doing a live stream too, buddy, at Vid Summit, and a similar question had sort of come up. And if you remember, Nick, we were all sort of talking about like, well, you need to have a plan, you need to have a target market. And then my answer was, you need to have a list of things that you can automatically default to. Do you have this list? You said you use Evernote. Is that something you go to when you're road blocking, or do you set aside time throughout the week or throughout the month to just build up your creative storehouse, so to speak?
Right. Well, I've tried to develop the habit to always capture ideas. So we're lucky enough now with technology, we always have our phone with us. So this is an example. The other day I was watching a football game with my son. He's big into football. And most of the time we DVR stuff. And I was starting to see commercials that I had never seen that were hilarious, that were very creative. And that spurred ideas for me. And I just pulled out my phone, and a lot of times things will come to me as a title or as just like a topic that I can then flesh out later. And then if I'm having those roadblock moments, I can go back to that title and then start breaking it down more. So there's a starting place where then I can do bullet points underneath that. And then I can go and put paragraphs under that. And that's the same way I do with scripts or a presentation, or when I'm thinking about questions to interview guests with a live show. It's the same kind of process that I use.
I think that's fantastic. We've got some great comments happening in the comment area. And if you have a question for Jeff Sieh on how to overcome roadblocks, let us know in the comment area. But right now, I want to ask those of you watching live, what do you do to overcome your creative roadblocks? Share your thoughts with us in the comment area, and we'd love to share those comments with the audience. Gord Eisman is saying, when I feel blocked, I may create something that is for me, and then somehow that break helps me to get recharged. I love that. Jeff, do you ever go off topic when you're blocked creatively and just work on something completely unrelated to your job, your objectives, or the things you have to do?
Yeah, and a lot of times, let's say I'll be putting together something for Social Media Examiner, and a lot of times I'll be pulling images that'll fit a certain topic that I know I'll use for the video later or for a post or something. But I'll see something that will really work for my brand. Well, I won't ignore that. I'll go ahead and capture that and put it in the proper folder that I can go back to do that later. So it's not really multitasking because it's so quick; it just happens. But I see stuff and I don't ignore it. I want to make sure to do it. But back to your kind of the original point of your question, I think that's where the carving and doing something the woodworking is for me. It's totally separate and it's off of a screen. It has nothing to do with social media, that kind of stuff. And I think that recharges me a lot.
That's fantastic. How did you pick up woodworking?
Well, I went with my dad. A lot of times he was dragging me to this stuff when I was little. I'm like, I gotta watch these people. It's so boring. But then I was like, I need to do something. I'm not really a painter, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool, and it's manly, and I'll do it. And it turned out really good. In fact, if you look at my Instagram account, there's a lot of that stuff I share there just for kicks.
Nice. Now you made the reference of that being manly. Now, if it was crocheting, for example, would you go against crocheting?
I have no problem with crocheting. In fact, one of my guys I had on my show, he's super creative. He does these really cool retro social media posters, and he knits. That's what he does.
Nice.
He makes scarves and stuff, and it's the same kind of thing. It allows him to get off his screens and relax and do something different. I think there's something about working with your hands, and I see a lot of. Since I do a lot of Pinterest stuff, there's a lot of Etsy people who use Pinterest, and I see the same thing. They do the same thing. They have this creative outlet that they can go somewhere different with, and it helps both places.
Nice. Now, on the flip side of that, Tim Longwell, he mentioned that sometimes for him, the creative blocks don't happen often enough. He tends to have too many ideas to pick from. Now, in a situation like that, to where you have kind of idea overload, to where it's like, I've made this humongous list. I've got all these ideas. It's kind of flowing, but now it's time to actually make that call. And I'm kind of blocked because of that. Do you have any tips for overcoming that?
What I would do is I would make a list, and I've done this too. It's the same thing. You almost have you're overwhelmed by your choices that you have because you have so many things you can go and you want to do all of them, which is great. The thing is if you have a list of this is my priorities, and Michael Hyatt in his Full Focus Planner, which I love, he has you focus on 3 tasks that you want to get through the day and then for the whole quarter. And so if you can go look at that list and then prioritize it to, okay, that fits what I'm trying to accomplish. That fits over here. And then you can break it down even further. You're not ignoring those things that you would like to do someday, or they're really creative and have a lot of merit, but this is what you're focusing on now. And then that self-discipline to do that is really, really cool. So, and you can also break that down further to like what works for your personal brand. Like I have all these ideas and all these images that would work, but do they fit with my style, my retro style? Does it fit with, the kind of the humor that I want to push out to people? Does it all fit in underneath there? Now, those other ideas are still great, and I may use them someday, but right now this helps me focus what I really need to drill down on.
You bring up some great points, and I want to do that, but first I want to say hi to some of our new visitors. Sandy Sanders, who I love, is joining us. Dave, your new videos are looking fantastic. Keep up the good work. Chuck Trice is asking questions. We'll be sure to get to that, Chuck, later on in the show. And Jennifer Musumba, who we all love in the YouTube community, she says, when I feel blocked, I take a closer look at things I normally ignore. Tim Longwell is saying, walk, shower, sleep, watch a video from another creative, grab photos, although he says that he has many ideas to pick from. Really great stuff. Jeff, I wanted to ask you sort of about that style guide, and because this is something that I feel is really helpful for me, is having this sort of like when I lack creative drive or creative energy, I want to go to my style guide that says, hey, when you're not creative, just make sure there's a blue background, a logo on the side, a smile on your face, and then pick a quote from Thomas Jefferson. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because whether or not we feel creative, you still have to create the deliverable. Have you created or talk to us about like your style guide? Do you have a process by which this is what an Instagram post must look like, or so on and so forth?
Yeah, we had that set up for us with Michael. Kind of had specific ways he wanted some certain templates to look on Instagram. And I do the same thing on for everything on my brand. And I learned this from like Peg Fitzpatrick and Rebecca Radice, where they have style guides where they have the actual fonts, they have the actual Pantone colors, and they have it all drilled down. And, that can change if you want it to. But if you look at like Rebecca Radice's posts and her Pinterest stuff, there's always a hint of orange in there somewhere. And that's just her style. And you can watch that evolve through time. And she's always testing things, but it's always going back to that style guide. Does it fit in there? And so, one, it makes it easier for you because when you grow and you start needing to outsource some of this stuff, you can hand that off to a VA or to another designer, and you can say, here, this is what it's got to fit into. And it just saves you so much time, figuring that out for the future and getting that all laid out. So, yeah, to figure out what I really need to do, I always go back to, my style guide, what's going to work, and plug it in there, because sometimes you just aren't creative and you do have deadlines to get out, and that design guide can really save your bacon.
In addition to that, like that design guide, I mean, that's also part of creating a visual brand. You know what I mean? Is getting all that stuff in order. And in addition to making it easier on yourself, instead of having to make something and say, okay, well, what font do I want to use on this? How do I want this to look? You've already got that dialed in. So it speeds you up. And it also makes you look professional, because you are creating a visual brand of some kind.
And one of the things I like to do is kind of have a rainy day file. And Owen, you kind of mentioned this earlier, when you have to pull something out. Well, you mentioned Thomas Jefferson quotes. Well, I have a whole Evernote document of just quotes that I can pull that fit my brand. They fit what I'm trying to say. And I have this huge document. So like, if I'm like, I've got to get this out and I know I need to put something out to, put it in front of my audience, then I can still put that out. I don't have to spend a lot of mental brain power on it, but it's still there, ready to go. It doesn't take a lot of time. And I kind of work ahead that way.
Nice.
Nick was saying about creating a brand online. Nick, this is something where you excel. Jeff, you're excellent at it as well. I'm more, I think, of the typical business owner, entrepreneur type, where I'm ultra creative. I'm not saying you guys aren't creative, but I'm ultra creative, almost like I've got like these 10 creative horses running wild in my brain. So every image can look different. If you look at my YouTube channel, all of my thumbnails in the beginning looked entirely different. How important is consistent imagery in creating a brand that will get results?
I think it's really, especially with today's age. I mean, that I mentioned Rebecca Radice. Whenever you see her stuff, it's hers. And hopefully when you see my stuff, it's Jeff Sieh's retro kind of look to it. And so what you have to learn how to be is super creative inside of those parameters. And then what I use is then I get clients where I can do other stuff with and be creative for them, and use some of those creative horses that you were talking about and put them over, on some of my client stuff where I can try some new things that I wouldn't fit for my brand, but it still lets me play. And so that's kind of how I get away with that, because I think it's just natural that you feel, you kind of feel stuck in a rut, and, but you still have to stay within your brand guidelines. So, you can push those and play with those, but I still think being consistent and staying in there just in the long run is the best. Now you can change, you can pivot. There's a lot of people who've pivoted. I've pivoted before. It's just, being as consistent as you can really does pay off.
Let me ask you guys watching on the show right now, for those of you watching live, answer with a yes or a no. Is your imagery, thumbnails, your Facebook posts, your Instagram posts, are those always consistent? Do they reflect the same brand message over and over again? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments.
And while we're waiting for that, I also want to say that doing all of that, also, if you're lazy, if you're into speed, and if you're into efficiency, doing it that way, it really speeds you up. It really makes everything easy, because it lets you focus more on, getting the thing done, instead of, trying to make a new piece of art every time that it's time to create something, which is also a humongous help as far as just speeding things up and getting things accomplished.
Yeah, we're getting some really funny comments here. Mostly no's. Jason, doing it with Jason, says, heck no.
Heck no.
Big shout out to my uncle, Michael Johnson, who is watching for the first time ever. Good to have you here, Uncle. Tell everyone in the family that I'm super famous. Okay, here's a question. They say that imitation is the highest form of flattery. Is there any validity to, when you're in a creative stump, to copy someone else? Charles, Jeff Sieh, your thoughts?
No, I don't think so. Now, you can go and get inspired from places, but you don't want to, and I still see this in today's day and age, is people think they can go to Google Images, do a search, and take those images and put them on their website. Big no-no, you get in big trouble. Don't do that. Now, I have a whole board where I've pinned old retro signs and retro things from different brands that I like, that I can go back to and go, I want to be inspired by that. I may like that font. I may like those color combinations. I may like how that lays out together. And so I'll go get inspired from those things. One of the best things I tell businesses is that if they're just like really stumped on how to be creative, is go to some other crazy niche. If you're in the insurance industry, go look and see what cake bakers are doing, and see how they're putting stuff together, seeing how the stuff is laid out. Watch TV. If you're a video creator, and I used to do this a lot of times when I was first learning how to edit video and create motion graphics, is go watch movies and take notes. Watch it more than once. Watch the director's cuts. Do all that stuff and see how they're putting things together. And study that, become a connoisseur of how things are working. And that helps build your creativity muscle as well. So there's a lot of study involved, I think.
And on top of that, I think also like going for, like if you are, let's say, a cake baker, since we're on that, I think also using tools is also a really valuable thing for keeping the creative juices flowing. Like if you're a cake baker, you can hop into a tool like the Google Keyword Planner, for example, and you can actually start looking for things that people are actually searching for. Even, go to the autocomplete and start looking for, things that people are searching for around baking cakes, and do a whole show, based on each topic that you you come up with. I think that's a great place to go. At least for me personally, that's a great place to go. You know, when I'm having a creative block as well.
Yeah.
Tim Longwell is an artist, and he's saying good artists copy, great artists steal. And then he, of course, is in the background saying, well, no, I'm not saying grab an image and use it without permission. But when I was in, it wasn't film school. It was more like media school. So we were learning media production. That was my major. We had an acronym. It was CASE the place, right? CASE the place. Copy and steal everything. As an artist, you know, obviously we are always respecting copyright, you know, and I just want to be emphatic about that. It's not only as an integrity issue, but as a legal issue as well. But an artist will take someone's work and make it their own, and they'll say, hey, this was really good. I love, Jeff, what you had to say about looking at a completely random industry's niche. And I know that I do that too. I go into movies. I spend a lot of time on Netflix and Hulu. And I also go back to the classics. You know, a big source of inspiration for me is the I Love Lucy show. To this day, it is one of my favorite shows. It is creative brilliance at its absolute finest. You know, Lucy invented the 3-camera shot, you know, with the removal of the fourth wall and all that kind of stuff. Watching this like modern eyes on an old show. Jeff, where are some of the places you mentioned woodworking? Where are some of the places that you like to go to get inspired?
Well, one of the things, you know, you mentioned old shows. For humor and stuff, I go back to Dick Van Dyke Show. That was one of my favorite ones. I loved him, and he's a genius. So I watch a lot of old comedians and how they tell stories, because even if you're doing visual marketing, learning how to tell a story, because that's what you're doing with images, or if you're making a video, you're telling a story. So study the good storytellers. You know, Lucy was a great example of telling, you know, hilarious stories, and her pacing and how she drew out things, and how far should she draw things out. I mean, so there's tons of stuff to learn there. One of my tools you mentioned earlier is that I go to, like, for an example, I had this picture. It was a Mark Twain something about your imagination out of focus, and I could not think of an image for imagination. I was struggling. So I went to the Google image search and I typed in imagination, and all of a sudden this pink elephant came up, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so I went to my stock photo site that I purchased stuff from, and I found an elephant wearing a top hat and all this stuff. And then I put the quote on top of that, and it was perfect. And so, like, when you learn where you can go to spur those creativity muscles, like, so if I have a quote and I'm trying to figure out what image would go for that word, I go from Google Images. I type that word in and see what comes up, and then I go and take that and, you know, then I composite stuff. So one of the things with the creative people that I've noticed is they know how to take things from different areas, and Jeff Goins talks about this, and then combine it in their own unique way. So learn where you can go and pull those different, you know, parts of the images you're trying to put together, and then learn how to, you know, kind of stack them on top of each other and composite them.
Fantastic reference. Yeah, especially when you say composite, because we are in no way, again, saying go to Google Images and steal something.
Right.
You know, that's a copyright issue. But I do the exact same thing. Nick, do you do the same thing?
Absolutely. I'll use Google Images. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just type in the word and see what how other people are visually demonstrating that word.
Yeah, and Jeff mentioned the stock sites as well. You know, like, they're also a great way, because there's a lot of, you know, visual artists that will, you know, that come up with amazing ideas for how to put that word into an image format. So using stock image sites for that is also a fantastic resource.
Yeah, and Pinterest is a great place too. I mean, if you're getting stumped with Google Images, go to Pinterest, because there's a lot. That's why I got started, actually, is because there's so much, you know, stuff that you can find there that gets your ideas flowing, and you can create your mood boards or whatever, and you can put stuff there and go back to those to be inspired as well.
Nice. Now with
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say with what you're doing now, are you still on, because you're doing a lot of live streaming and things like that, are you still on Pinterest a lot?
Oh yeah, every day. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Because, I mean, this is a side note, but Pinterest drives a ton of traffic. In fact, to Social Media Examiner, it's the second highest driver of social traffic to the website.
Wow.
So yeah, it's humongous. and people just don't
Wow.
realize that. But yeah, it's a lot of traffic.
Mega
Yeah, I
tip.
didn't realize that either. You just stumped me. I was like, wow, that's huge.
It's not even on my radar. Pinterest is not even on my radar.
I guess it should be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be.
Because you can pin videos there, just saying.
Yeah, and on my 2 other podcasts, females are the highest engaged demographic there, and I would assume that Pinterest is still largely a female-dominated social media site.
It skews more for females there in the United States. Now, in the other countries, it's pretty even. Like in the UK and some of the European nations, it's pretty even. So, it's not like it used to be where it was all wedding dresses and how to do your nails. It's a lot. There's a lot of cool stuff there now.
I'm out.
Nice.
As we start to wind down the show, we like to introduce a little segment that we call Nick's Questions, where we answer questions directly from the audience. So if you have any questions for me, Jeff, or Nick, you can go and ask them in the comment area now. Man, I played the wrong sound effect, but it's okay, guys. That's the value. That's the value of live. Nick, take it away.
Gord Eisman asked, what do you think about surveying your audience for ideas? Good, bad, yes, no, positives, negatives? Jeff?
Yes, totally. In fact, if you do that, I think we don't do that enough because we tend to think that we're just talking and, everybody wants to hear what we want to know, but they're coming to watch you or listen or read for a reason. And the main thing is to provide information, and they will not stick around if you're not doing what you need to give them. So I would say we need to do a better job of that as marketers and creators and all that.
Yeah, and for the record, everybody that's listening to this right now and everybody that's watching this live, he just called every one of you selfish. That's what just happened just now. But no, that's the reality of it, though. Like we all consume all this stuff. Everything it is that we consume. We do that because it serves a purpose. For us personally of some kind. So yeah, that's an excellent answer. Another great question. This is not related to the coming up with ideas or the creativity side, but Jay Dave wants to know if you're into automobiles.
I am not as much as I should be. I was more into motorcycles. That was my thing.
Oh, nice. Do you have a motorcycle now?
No, I actually sold my last motorcycle because I have kids.
Okay.
But I have a Jeep now, which is the closest thing I can get to a motorcycle. So
nice.
You have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, very cool. I used to have a V-Star when I lived in America. I loved that thing. Chuck Trice asked, and I guess this is for you, Owen. Are you using BeLive.tv for this live video?
We sure are, and we love BeLive. Get a trial right now at BeLive.tv and check out their YouTube channel where you'll see me making all of their videos. So
nice.
I'm totally being selfish. It looks like Gord just
well done. He did. Yeah, Gord asks another one. He's dropping the questions here. We appreciate that, Gord. He says, how do I make cool Instagram visual covers for videos? I noticed that the only option is to grab a frame and a photo in the process of posting. Excellent question, Gord. I want to know that as well.
That is a big thing, and you have to literally scroll through and find a good capture. So what I have done, if I'm doing motion graphics, it's a lot easier because I can actually make a frame that I know is going to be good. I can go and find that one pretty easy. I'll put it at the beginning or the end. When you're doing like a live video thing, it's just hard because I'll spend 10 minutes for some of the social media. We'll have like the speakers on there and you'll get them doing weird faces, and it's getting that perfect thing. You just have to keep scrolling through it. I found if I use a stylus with my phone, I'm able to stop it easier because sometimes you'll take your thumb off and it'll go 3 frames ahead. If you use a stylus, sometimes that works a little bit better.
Great tip. I know back in the day, I don't know if it's still this way or not because I don't use Instagram in that way. Maybe I should. I know before you used to be able to, was it at the end maybe? Like you put one frame at the end and then, or maybe it was the beginning, like one frame at the beginning or the end, whichever one it was. And then it would kind of default to that. Does that still happen?
It does. I think it starts at I'm trying to remember. I think it's the first frame, but you can like go your thumb all the way to the end if you have it on the end frame too. So it's still not I wish they would let you do like YouTube and Facebook and upload your own thumbnails. They just haven't yet.
Okay. The next question.
Before you ask that next question, I often say to people that a good-looking video is just a collection of bad-looking videos, because that's really, it's this,
yeah.
But times 500, actually have a great looking person. It's funny how how that works. Go ahead.
The next question is from Doing It with Jason. He says, "What's your favorite project that you have made from wood?"
I do a lot of Christmas carving. So I carve like a lot of Christmas bears and stuff like that. And so it's just I'm getting better. So Christmas is my thing. I don't know. It just makes me happy to carve Santa. He's got a beard.
Nice. And I guess you're probably a hit in the family around Christmas time. You, like, as a wood carver, you're probably a big hit to where you're passing out ornaments and all that stuff. I bet that's awesome.
They like that. And I've started recently on the lathe is turning pins. So I'm going to probably bring some. Owen, if you're there at Social Media Marketing World, I'll get you one.
Oh yeah, nice. That's awesome. And of course I don't want to be that guy that wears you out. It's just like, oh man, that wood print of Thomas Jefferson, Jeff.
Right.
And Jeff, I have a question for you because creating all this stuff, you're doing Instagram, you're doing Pinterest, you're doing video, you're doing live video. Like with all of that, do you have a special set of, well, not a special set, but what are some tools that you can recommend to people that you use? Like maybe I know a lot of people, like when I recommend Photoshop, a majority of people are like, hey, that's I'm either not paying the money per month or I don't want to go through the learning curve of figuring out how to use Photoshop or whatever. Do you have some specific go-to things that you like to recommend to people for helping with their creativity or to create some of this imagery?
Yeah, if you're looking for images, I quit using so much free stock photos. I mean, there's some great ones like Pixabay and all those kind of things because I see so many other people using them. And so I try to stand out. I'm always trying to stand out on the feed. So I use digital Juice? No, well, I do use Digital Juice, but this was Digital Photos. I can't remember what their name. They anyway. I use them all the time. 123 royalty free is another great stock photo site that's pretty inexpensive, but I pay for my images. But yes, Digital Juice. I use everything, and like I said, I try to grab everything that will work and composite it. Luckily, I kind of grandfathered in. I was one of the first founders of the Digital Juice the plan they have, so I get like unlimited stuff, and so I can go in there and pull all their motion graphics. And one of the things, I don't know about you guys, but this whole vertical video stuff, it's a whole nother learning curve. So I grew up learning how to do landscape video and doing all that stuff, and everything's moving like for Facebook, Instagram stories. And so learning how to take some of these video libraries and cropping them and putting them together in After Effects or whatever is a whole new skill set. But I encourage everybody to start doing that because it's going to be around for a while. But Digital Juice, I use all Adobe's products. Wave is a new tool that I've been using to play with some really quick video editing for, it's almost like Canva for videos where you can resize stuff to fit in different formats for different platforms.
Nice.
Of course, Canva, PicMonkey is another one. This new one, there's another one called Wave as well for taking video, taking a podcast and making a waveform at the bottom where you can put to Facebook where you can hear the audio and there's some movement going on. A lot of podcasters are using that. We're using that at Social Media Examiner a lot. And then just apps that, there's different apps for different platforms, but just being aware of them and then be able to put them all together really works well.
Nice. Yeah, I think those are fantastic. Now I'm looking at this right now. I just pulled that up when you said that. I went to Animatron/Wave. Is that the one that you're talking about?
I believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I really like them. They've got a great video library. I mean, a lot of times the stock video that you'll get is pretty sucky. It's pretty bad. It really is. And they're able to get it from like Getty Images, which is the really expensive, nice stuff. And you're able to use that in those projects, which I really like because there's some really funny clips you can get in there. They're really high quality. And I've been playing with them for a while. And it's really, really cool.
Nice. Now, what about creating your own imagery for like if you're putting stuff on like Instagram, as an example, what do you think, or what tips do you have for creating your own imagery? Because we've all got phones in our pockets, right? So like, let's say you're at the coffee shop, you can get your own image of a coffee cup. You can get your own image of like your kids or you doing something or whatever. What do you think about creating your own imagery or B-roll type video clips to use in your social media? Do you think that's a positive, a negative, too much space on the hard drive? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I tell people I'm not a very good photographer, but I'm a really good stock photographer. So I know how to get stock photography. Now I'm working really hard on getting better at shooting my photos. So I've been doing some of that myself. If you could shoot photos, man, do it. And then I like to use, there's some apps that I use. Let me see which one of them is. Lumiere is one where you can, let's say you take that picture of a coffee mug, and well, you can add smoke that comes up and having it spinning around in the coffee spinning around in the cup. And so having a little bit of motion and being a little playful with some of your images is a great way kind of to take them to the next level. We also use an app for Instagram, for our Instagram stories, called Continual, which allows us to actually take videos and it will chop it up automatically. So it'll go to the next story slide. So because I think you're limited to 15 seconds on Instagram stories. Well, this app will actually take any, we've taken, long video, and it will automatically slice it up, and you can upload it to your story and people can just watch it seamlessly, which we've found some really good success with that.
That is
nice. That's a power tip.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Okay, we got time for one more question.
The next question is from Charles Rupert. He says, is there a way to utilize live on all different platforms?
I actually do this for Social Media Examiner for their live Friday show. So what they do is they use a platform called Crowdcast, and it's kind of it lets you go in there. It's kind of like Blab back in the day, if you guys remember that. But people go there to Crowdcast. They're able to interact in the comments. I take it from on Wirecast, which is another platform to stream content, and I take it to Wirecast and I capture it, and then I stream it out to all the different platforms. So when they go live, they're going live to Periscope, Facebook, Crowdcast, and YouTube. So we're going live at the same time. We also use a service called Switchboard, and that kind of lowers the bandwidth hit on me. There is a delay. It's not the best for, like, I love Be Live. This is what I use for my own show and what Eric and I use when we go live on during the week on Social Media Examiner's page, because we're able to pull up comments. We're able to interact with people. To me, that's the biggest thing that you can do if you're starting to do live video, is being able to interact with people. That by far is the best way to do it. So I would be less concerned about going everywhere and more concerned with interacting the audience on that platform, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Awesome stuff, Jeff. Hey, that's going to wrap up our show for today. Thank you so much, Jeff Sieh, for joining us. How can we stay in touch with you?
You can find me everywhere on the web at Jeff Sieh, and then you can find me at manlypinteresttips.com, where we're always adding testosterone one pin at a time.
I love to see it. And if you out there watching enjoyed the show today, I want to invite you to share this video on your timeline right now if you haven't already. We had 14 shares already today.
Nice. Go Sherifiers.
Yeah, we love it. And remember, we're going to pick one lucky Sherifier to give a shout out to on next week's show. Thanks so much for joining us today, guys. Don't forget to check us out next week, Wednesday, 9 a.m. It's the Business of Video podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Video podcast. If you like the show, give us a review on iTunes or share this episode on social media now. Join us next time on Facebook Live. Just visit businessofvideopodcast.com and subscribe to the newsletter updates. This podcast is brought to you by Tuber Tools and BizTubeAcademy.com.